Hey, I'm Nancy Cavey, National ERISA and Individual Disability Attorney. Welcome to this episode of Winning Isn't Easy. Before we get started, I've got to give you a legal disclaimer. This podcast isn't legal advice. The Florida Bar Association says I've got to say this, and so I've said it. But I will tell you that nothing will prevent me from giving you an easy to understand overview of the disability insurance world, the games that disability carriers play, and what you need to know to get the benefits you deserve. So off we go. I know that securing the disability benefits you deserve is challenging enough, but many disability policies or plans have some policy limitations or exclusions that you need to understand. That's crucial because while I don't support those restrictions and limitations, you've got to understand the impact of those on your benefits and the strategy that goes in to play, if you will, to try to minimize the applicability or even impact of these provisions. So, today, I'm going to give you a few examples to give you a broad perspective on the types of conditions that disability carriers will often resist covering or will only argue are limited to a specific period. And normally it's 2 years. Let's first talk about drug addiction and substance abuse and an ERISA disability claim. Next, I want to talk about an Alzheimer's disease claim and ERISA disability benefits and why a claim for Alzheimer's benefits might be limited to just 2 years under a mental nervous policy limitation or a subjective medical limitation. And lastly, I want to talk about gender dysphoria and an ERISA disability claim. And again, why a claim for disability as a result of gender dysphoria potentially could be limited to just 2 years of benefits. So let's take a break before we dive into these medical conditions and understanding more about policy limitations or exclusions that can impact your ERISA disability claim.
Have you been robbed of your peace of mind by your disability insurance carrier? You owe it to yourself to get a copy of Robbed of Your Peace of Mind, which provides you with everything you need to know about the long-term disability claims process. Request your free copy of the book at caveylaw.com today.
Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy. Let's talk about drug addiction, substance abuse, and your ERISA disability insurance claim. We all know that drug addiction is an epidemic. It impacts Americans of all ages, all occupations. I'm often asked, look, can I collect ERISA disability benefits if I'm disabled due to drug addiction? Now, in answering that question, we need to go to the disability policy or plan. Many disability policies or plans will have limitations on how long a person can collect disability benefits for a drug addiction issue. Now, typically, there are two provisions that come into play. The first is the substance abuse clause that will normally limit the payment of benefits to just 2 years. The second is a mental nervous policy limitation that can also restrict benefits to just 2 years if the disability is caused or contributed to by a psychiatric condition. Some disability policies or plans will categorize substance abuse as a psychiatric condition, making it subject to either the 2-year substance abuse limitation or the 2-year mental nervous policy limitation. If that specific provision is absent, I see that disability carriers or plans often argue that the substance abuse stems from an underlying psychiatric condition, thereby imposing the 2-year limitation. I will also tell you that many policies or plans state that losing a professional license doesn't equate to a disability. So if you're a physician or a physician's assistant or a nurse whose license has been suspended or revoked due to drug addiction, your license status is really irrelevant to your disability claim. Let's talk about addiction to a prescription medication. Now, I've represented people who have had multiple spinal surgeries or multiple surgeries for other painful conditions. And unfortunately, they have become addicted to narcotics. I'm often asked, well, look, can my ERISA disability benefits be limited to just 2 years? I mean, after all, I'm disabled because of my back pain, but I do have this addiction issue. The answer is going to be found in that policy or plan. If your disability is due solely to your spinal condition, you might qualify for benefits beyond the standard limitation. But your doctor is really going to have to make it clear that you are disabled because of the physical manifestations of your spinal condition and pain, not because of your addiction to medication. On the other hand, if your disability stems solely from substance abuse, basically we're going to be looking at a 2-year limitation. If the substance abuse is linked to an underlying psychiatric condition, and people will self medicate with psychiatric conditions, benefits are most likely going to be limited to just 2 years. There are 4 common reasons that ERISA disability claims for substance abuse are denied. And I think it's important that you understand these. But once again, we have to go back to your specific policy or plan. Common defenses can include number one, the substance abuse is classified as a pre existing condition, is excluded under the terms of the policy. Number two, the substance abuse is deemed to be self inflicted due to your voluntary use. Or number three, the insurance company argues that you wouldn't be disabled if you adhered to the medication treatment regimen and that you're abusing that medication. And then you're not following appropriate medical advice. Number four is that they are going to argue that you're just not disabled, period. Doesn't matter what your condition is, you're just not disabled. Now, normally what I will see is the argument that your addiction is the cause of your disability. Number two, you're not compliant with treatment, and therefore you're violating the terms of the policy or the plan. So even if benefits were limited to weren't limited to, rather, if they were limited to just 2 years, there still would be an issue because you're non-compliant with your medical treatment. Again, it goes back to what's in your medical records, what's in your prescription history, whether your doctors are of the opinion that you're using and abusing, and whether or not they believe that your disability is caused by or contributed to that substance abuse. It's a case-by-case, policy-by-policy type of determination. But if you're facing that particular issue, I think you need to understand very well that there's potentially going to be an argument that your benefits are limited to just 2 years because of drug abuse or substance abuse. Got it? Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Alzheimer's disease and what's called a subjective medical condition limitation. Got it?